All right, welcome everybody to the call. How is everybody doing today? Drop some ones in the chat if you're excited and you're ready to get this going. Yes, sir. All right, we got 68 people in the chat. Where's everybody tuning in from today? We got Bowmanville, Belgium, Toronto. Oh, it's going way too fast. Dallas, Markham, Etobicoke, Scarborough, Houston, Alberta, Dallas, Flower City, Markham, Toronto, Newmarket, Mutton, Ontario, Denver, Colorado. Okay, going really quick. Well done. All right. So today is going to be a bit different for financial literacy. Usually I've either got a presentation or a guest on and we kind of co-host something. Today we've got Traders Paradise, we got Donnie Dropout, and we got John Nikos coming on the call, and they're actually going to go over gold and silver. I just seen somebody ask, where am I speaking from? I'm speaking from Toronto, Scarborough, Toronto, and Traders Paradise is going to be speaking from, I believe, Kitchener, so Canada, Ontario once again. And we got a special call for you guys today. We got a good presentation ready. These guys have obviously loads of experience on precious metals. If you got any questions, feel free to message them or myself afterwards. Tag us on Instagram. We got 72 participants on right now all of a sudden. So without further ado, we're going to start this off. We're going to have Donnie take over. And every time you guys have a question, every time you guys want to know something else, if you misunderstood something, whatever, drop it in the chat. At the end of the call, there will be time, and then I'll be able to ask the questions out to Donnie and John, and they'll be able to answer everything for you guys. So take notes, be ready. Note takers are money makers. Drop your questions in the chat. And Donnie, when you're ready, you can take it away.
Let's go. If you guys can hear me all right, just let me know in the chat real quick by dropping a few numbers. Extremely excited to be here and co-hosting the call, right? And shout out to having us on, right? I really appreciate you for allowing John and I to come on here and kind of share a little bit of value with the squad. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. We're gonna dive right into things, guys. I'm not gonna waste any time. This is going to be a very in-depth, call, right? We're gonna be going over a number of different things. And, as you guys can see on screen, right, we're gonna be talking about gold, silver, and money, right? And how to really think about gold and silver, because there's a lot of misconceptions, right? There's a lot of different things we're gonna be going over on the call today. Like was said at the beginning of the call, make sure you have a notebook. Okay, there's going to be a ton of value dropped on this call. So I'm gonna go ahead and dive right into it. And the first thing we're gonna start off with here is a few questions to actually consider. And maybe these are things that you have already in terms of questions, right? But this is also, just to kind of get the gears turning in terms of, kind of the different topics we're going to be getting into on the call today. Right. So first question that we have here is, what makes gold and silver actually valuable? Right. Pretty straightforward question. We're going to get into that. Is investing in gold and silver actually risky? Right. What's the risk involved with that? Why are gold and silver not used as money anymore? That's a big question when you think back in time. Gold and silver was once used as money. Right now we use, paper bills. What is the reasoning behind that? Why isn't it used as money anymore? Right. We're going to get into that. Is the modern day monetary system better than a gold standard, right? For those of you guys that don't know what a gold standard is, we'll be answering that question as well. All right, I'm gonna disable annotations real quick. All right, perfect, there we go. Right. How would you explain what money is to an alien? All right, that's one of my favorite questions. We're gonna get into that as well. Where does money actually come from? Believe it or not, a lot of people know how to go out and spend money. A lot of people know how to make money at work, but they don't actually know what's really going on behind the scenes and where things actually are taking place, where money actually really truly comes from. We're going to be answering that. And last but not least, where is the majority of the world's gold today? Who owns it? Why? And how did they actually go about acquiring it? Okay. It's funny. We share with Philip a presentation that we were initially planning to go over on the call today, but we actually literally just within the past couple hours threw together this one. We took, we've done a lot of different calls on precious metals in the past. And what we've done, right, because it's been a minute since we've done a call like this, is we went ahead and we took the best parts of each of those presentations, each of those calls, and we put it into one call, one presentation here today. All right. So for the 80, 70 y'all that are in here, count yourself lucky, right? Because the amount of sauce that's going to be dropped in the call today is going to be, it's hard to put words to the information that we're about to be getting into. But first things first, and I really encourage you guys to write this down. Okay. First things first, it's the definition of money. Okay. Definition of money. Now, money must have three qualities. Write these three qualities down. Okay. It must be a universal medium of exchange. All right. Anyone will accept it or trade for it. Okay. Number two, it must be a unit of account, right? It's easy to make change, calculate prices with it, so on and so forth, right? It must be a unit of account. And last but not least, the most important one is it must be a long-term store of value, something that won't lose value over time, okay? Ideally, and this is, kind of what we have at the bottom of the slide here, it should be portable, divisible, durable, fungible, right? Interchangeable, each unit is the same, okay? And have some sort of intrinsic value, okay? So just with this definition, right, of what money should be, right, I want you guys to think about the monetary system that's currently in place today, right? The paper bills that you have in your wallet, right? The numbers you see on your screen when you log into your online banking, okay? Is the monetary system that we're currently using abiding by the rules of what money must actually be, right? Is this actually real money that we're using in this day and age? Okay, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail. And the thing that I want to talk about with gold and silver is why this actually meets the requirements that we just went over for what the definition of money, why gold and silver actually meets the three qualifications. Okay. One, it's portable, right? It's something you can carry around with you. All right. It's not ideal to carry around a 100-ounce, brick of gold or silver, but it is portable. Okay. It's divisible, right? You can have, 1-ounce denominations, even smaller than 1-ounce denominations. You can get a gold coin that's, a quarter of an ounce of gold. All right. It's very easily, divisible. When you think about something like a gold wire, right? You can take 1 ounce of gold and stretch that out into like a 50-meter long wire that you can then use and that you'll find on like a motherboard of a PC, right? It's very easily divisible. It's durable, right? It's not something that's gonna. We have some funny pictures on the screen here. I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. But gold and silver is durable. All right, it's not something that can be burns to the point that it disappears, right? When you heat it, it's going to obviously melt, right, and then be shaped into whatever you want it to look like, right? Coins, bars, what have you, right? It's fungible and it has intrinsic value. Now I want you guys to take a look at the pictures that we have on screen here. Okay, why gold and silver was initially used as money, right? If we take a look at the first picture that we have on screen here, right, why money was invented, we got a dude that's at a table, right, at a desk, and he's holding up this cow that he has that he was going to trade with the other guy on the other side of the counter. And he's like, sorry, I've got nothing smaller, right? It wasn't ideal for barter to really last. When we think about the barter system that was once in place, right, you trading goods for other goods, you trading services for other services, obviously that's still something that works today, but it wasn't ideal. Okay. When you think about, something like cigarettes, right? What else can be used as money, right? Something like cigarettes would not be able to be used as money, right? When you think about food, okay, food can't really be money either, right? Because, food doesn't stay good forever, right? It's something that, I guess you could, say this kind of goes hand in hand with durability in that, food, if you buy an apple, right? An apple is not going to be good for more than a month. I guess it depends how you store it. But longer term, it's not something that's ideal for money. It can't be liquid. Okay. Money cannot be something that's liquid. It can't be water, right? Water is obviously super, super abundant. And it also can't be something like this. Now I wanted to show you guys this, right? This is actually, here, I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. So I can show you guys this, right? This is lapis lazuli. All right. Drop some numbers in the chat if you guys are familiar with crystals or some sort of like, stones like this. Okay. I even have a crystal on my chain here as well. All All right. And this is similar to what we're seeing in the slideshow right here with these stones. Okay. And the point that can be made here, right? The reason why this can't be used as money is because there's no real use case aside from maybe some spiritual benefits, right? Lapis lazuli. If you guys are familiar with lapis lazuli, this has to do with, spirituality, right? There's different spiritual benefits that go, hand in hand with it, but there's no real intrinsic value outside of that. So it wouldn't make sense for us to use lapis as money. Okay. Whereas you think about gold and silver, there's a lot of use cases outside of the fact that it not only looks good, right? Gold and silver is something that's used in a lot of technology, right? There's a lot of intrinsic value in gold and silver. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do, right, is pull up this clip, and I'm going to pull it up to a specific timestamp, which we're already here. I'm going to make sure that the computer sound is being shared here as well. And this is a documentary about gold. So, okay, I will drop, we'll make sure to drop all the links and maybe even this entire presentation to you guys at the end of the call. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and play this little clip for you guys. I'll mute myself, and I want you guys to just take in what is being said in this particular video.
So the reasons why gold remains money are essentially the same as they've been for centuries. And while to many people's confusion, a lot of those reasons are based on faith, the idea of faith in a timeless physical asset which has proven its worth since the dawn of civilization is perhaps less confounding than the faith shown in the central bank governors of the modern day monetary system, who can conjure trillions of fiat currency units out of thin air at will. But what was it about gold and silver which led to those two elements becoming money? Well, to answer that question, all we need is a periodic table and a big red marker pen.
First of all, we can remove all the gases. Obviously, we can't use things like hydrogen or argon as money. Next, we can remove elements such as calcium and sodium.
So I'm just going to pause it here, right? What he's doing in this little clip is he's going through the entire periodic table and ruling out different minerals, different, gases, which, he did mention, that wouldn't be ideal to use as money. Okay, just so we're clear here.
Which dissolve in water, and also anything that reacts with air, whether it corrodes or bursts into flames, neither of which is a suitable. This removes 56 elements. We need to eliminate anything radioactive because, well, quite simply, you don't want your money to kill you. And perhaps surprisingly, this disqualifies 45 elements. Now, if you've been keeping up, that leaves us with just 5 so-called precious metals: gold, silver, rhodium, platinum, and palladium. Neither rhodium nor palladium were discovered until the 18th century, so that rules them out as early money. And the problem with platinum is its melting point of around 3,000 degrees Celsius, which was far out of reach of mankind's earliest furnaces. All that leaves us is gold and silver, and it was these two precious metals which mankind adopted as both stores of value and mediums of exchange.
Despite the fact that gold is no longer used as currency, its characteristics as a store of value remain untarnished.
Okay, so I'm going to pause the video right here. Okay, so again, he's explaining why gold and silver made the most sense back in the day to be used as money, right? All of the other periodic elements, for the most part, except for the 4 that were mentioned, were ruled out because they didn't meet, certain requirements for again, kind of what we went over at the beginning for what money actually must be. Okay, so I'm not too sure why this isn't full screen anymore. Let's go back to full screen. All right, let's carry on here. Okay, so let's talk about a gold standard. Now, drop some numbers in the chat if you've ever heard of a gold standard, right? If you're familiar with it, maybe you don't have a full, deep understanding of what a gold standard actually is. But I'm seeing a lot of numbers in the chat, so that's perfect. So for those of you that don't know what a gold standard is, okay, back in in history, right, we can look back and see when at one point in time, right, our current paper money that we're using today at one point was backed by gold, something of real value. Okay, nowadays it's not the case, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But if you guys take a look, this is actually from Wikipedia, right, where it's talking about pre-Civil War. All right, before the Civil War, the only money issued by the United States was gold and silver coins, right? And only such coins were legal tender. All right, for those guys that don't know what legal tender is, right, that's payment in a form that is accepted. All right, legal tender, right, payment in a form that is accepted. Okay, paper currency in the form of banknotes was issued by privately owned banks, right? The notes then being redeemable, okay, for, you know, in this case, golds at the bank's office. Okay, they were not legal tender; they were a representation of what was being held. Okay, so think of it like this: if you've ever been to a bar, right, and you've had to use the coat check, right, they give you that little receipt. Okay, that receipt then represents the coat that you have in the coat check that you then want to go and grab before you leave the bar. Okay, same thing with what we have here with gold and what was once used as money. These were banknotes that represented, right, quantities of gold that were held at a bank. So at one point, you know, the currency, right, the paper money that was being used actually had value because it was representing something like gold. Okay, no longer are we using this system. Okay, and again, we're going to talk into, you know, a little bit more detail about that as we're moving forward here. But that's what a gold standard is. Okay, and continuing on here, right? National governments had in the past issued paper money and made it legal tender, but usually with that, at least the, you know, pretense that the notes would be redeemable for, you know, golds at some time. Okay, now again, if we take a look, I don't know how well you guys can actually see this on the screen here, right? But you guys can see that, you know, for example, the picture on the right-hand side here, right? This banknote, okay, this $100 bill, right? It literally says, you know, $100 in gold coin, right? $100 in gold coin. And you can even see on the other side here too, this is a gold certificate, money used to represent gold, okay, which was the true money. Currency represented, you know, the actual money, which was gold. Okay, so what we call money today is not money, it's currency. All right, there's a big difference between currency and money. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull up this clip as well. All right, we do have a few different clips that we're going to be playing throughout the call here. It's actually from the same video, just a different timestamp. All right, so we're going to pull it up 1420, and we're going to play this out here for you guys.
We had no central bank from 1836 to 1913. That was one of the greatest periods of prosperity in world history. Forget American history. I mean, invention, you know, the telephone, the reaper, the airplane, radio, phonograph, massive increase, electricity, massive increases in productivity, successes, Andrew Carnegie. So America grew like crazy with no central bank. First of all, it's voluntary. You as a nation could choose to be on it or not. A lot of countries found it in their interest to do so. And all you had to do was say, okay, for money, but it's redeemable for gold at a fixed rate. And you sort of declared that, and that was your policy, and you stayed with it. Now, if a whole bunch of currencies are convertible to gold at a fixed rate, then through a simple transitive law, they're convertible into each other at a fixed rate. And that was how the world worked, again, with no guidance from bureaucrats. And if you ran a trade deficit, you had to pay for that in gold. Well, what happened when you had to pay for that in gold? Well, you were decreasing your money supply. That was deflationary. Prices went down. Wages might have gone down for that matter, but that made you more competitive, and then you would come back to a trade surplus because all of a sudden you were the cheap provider. Likewise, if you were running a trade surplus and you were getting all this gold, what happened? Your money supply increased. That was inflationary. Your prices went up. You were less competitive. So this was a self-equilibrating system.
The gold standard was a method that tied the political classes and the voter to reality with regards to the construction of an economy untied to arithmetic.
We've had a number of occasions when a gold standard basically broke down, but it was never because of the system, never because of the gold. It's always been because of politicians breaking the gold standard.
The gold standard didn't work because it didn't allow the spenders to plunder the savers. Were, of course, in that. It wouldn't work today because the political class doesn't want any part of a system that constrains their power.
There was an article, an editorial in the New York Times actually, that they pointed in the 50s. It pointed out that it didn't fail. It was killed. It was killed by the Allied powers because they wanted to fight war. Before World War I broke out, the consensus was, the general consensus was that the war couldn't last more than a few months because there certainly wasn't enough money for the governments to fight the war. And of course, that view didn't understand the first thing the governments would do was cancel the right of redemption and print the money to fight the war.
There were 5 people kind of in the room at Camp David that weekend. It was August 15th, 1971. Richard Nixon went up to Camp David with his, economic team. It was Paul Volcker, who was Deputy Secretary of the Treasury at the time, Arthur Burns, who was Chairman of the Fed, John Connally, who was Secretary of the Treasury, President Nixon, and there was a 5th man, and for many years I never knew who the 5th man was. I couldn't figure it out. It turned out to be a friend of mine, Kenneth Dam, was the Dean Emeritus of the University of Chicago Law School. I spoke to Volcker and I spoke to Ken Dam, so I spoke to 2 of the 5 people who were there most involved with the decision, and they all told me the same thing, which is they really thought it was temporary.
Okay, so I'm in the clip right here, and actually the individual that's speaking here, right? This is, James Rickards, right? Some of you guys might know him as Jim Rickards, very, very well known, not only author, right, but individual in the space of precious metals. He's got a number of different books, right? We actually have a few of them here. This is a book called Currency Wars, right? If you guys have not read this book, okay, this is a banger. Go ahead and write it down. Really, really important in terms of understanding, kind of where the monetary system's going, right? And it, literally being called Currency Wars, right? I guess the subtitle is, the making of the next global crisis, which, believe it or not, we're in right now. Okay, believe it or not, we are in it right now. So, James Rickards is actually somebody that we have a pretty close connection to. The individual that we were able to partner with and actually become precious metals dealers, right? For those of you guys that didn't know, is a very, close individual with, Rob and James Rickards have met up a number of different times, sat down at lunch. In fact, they do it every year. So really, really cool connection there. But, the video, I want to see if I can find this specific part where it talks about war. This is talking about why they had to go away from the gold standard, guys. Okay. So the reason why they ended up leaving the gold standard, and this was only meant to be temporary. That's what most people thought. Okay. The reason why they left the gold standard was because of war, right? They didn't have enough money at the time to fund the war. So what they do, they debacked, basically, the monetary system from gold. They unbacked the monetary system from gold so that they would then have enough money to fund the war. Okay. So coming back to the slideshow here. Okay. As we move forward, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about banking, debt, and credit. Okay. This is huge. So what's good? Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So although gold is the ideal form of money, many people prefer to keep their money in secure storage. Again, we were talking about the co-check earlier, right? We had these banknotes that were initially issued. Banknotes are not money, okay? They represent money, okay? I hope you guys are writing this down. They are a form of credit, a promise to settle debt at a later time. Okay. So at the time of the gold standard, when they decided to start, moving away from that, okay, this, the currency, the banknotes that we're seeing, and that we've seen in previous slides as well, they started to change in their appearance, right? And again, this is, this would be 20 American dollars and it still says in gold coin. All right. Things, started to shift, and we're going to get into that. But, this is really, really key. It's actually said by JP Morgan, all right, one of the biggest bankers, in the world at the time. Gold is money. Everything else is credit. Okay. Credit is a promise to settle debt at a later time. Okay. So moving forward here, we're going to talk about a few different scams in today's call. We're talking about gold and silver, right? But we're also going to be exposing some of the biggest scams in the entire world, right? This is scam number 1. Fractional reserve banking. Type a 1 in the chat if you've heard of fractional reserve banking before. Okay, I want to see how many of you guys have heard of fractional reserve banking. All right, I'm seeing a lot of the OGs that are on the call. They're like, "Yee, we're in that." Okay, for people that are new, all right, this is going to be really, really important for you to understand. So when you deposit $100 into your bank account, that bank is legally allowed to loan out 90% of that money. Okay, so you deposit $100 into your account. Right. It's actually, it's more than that. According to the picture, right? We're seeing, you know,
okay.
I think it's like 90, it's 95%, is it not?
Yeah, I don't even know if there's a limit anymore.
There might not even be a limit at this point, but you know, at the time and what we're seeing in the screenshot here, this is as though, you know, the cap were 90%. You could loan out 90% of the money that's, you know, being deposited. So with what we're seeing in this screenshot, I'm going to explain this. Okay. Let's say that, you know, I got my paycheck, you know, I've deposited $100 into my account. Okay. That bank is then legally allowed to take, you know, in this case, 90% of that and loan that $90 out to somebody else. So let's say that John, you know, has to get a new car part, right? Something about his, it's actually kind of funny because his car has been acting up lately. But let's say that he needs to fix a part of his car. So he goes in and he has to get a $90 loan, right? It's a weird number, but, you know, stay with me here, okay? He goes ahead and gets that $90 that the bank lent out from my 100, okay? Then John goes and pays, right, the car company or the repair shop that $90, and it then gets deposited at their bank, right? They then are allowed to again loan out $81 of that 90. And the process is continuing over and over and over and over again. So from an initial deposit of $100, as time's going on, right? You repeat that 10 times, $100 is what was initially deposited. And you've literally created $900 of unrepayable debt out of thin air. Does that make sense? Drop twos in the chat if that's making sense. Okay. Okay, cool. If there's any questions, again, we'll be able to take those up at the end of the call. All right. This is one of the biggest scams in the entire world, yet 90% of people don't know that it even exists. Okay. It's about awareness, raising your level of awareness. What's really going on behind the scenes. Your bank account, even though it says there's $1,000 in your bank account, 900 of that's been lent out to people that you've never known and you never will know. Okay. But there's still $1,000 on the screen. Okay. So this clip right here, it's going to explain it in a little bit more detail. All right. Thrive. You know, we love this documentary. A lot of really, really good nuggets, you know, dropped in here, but it's around the 52-minute mark. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up.
It's right after Shorty's done.
And it's right after Shorty's done explaining this. All right, right here.
Which means that those who can...
It's like a road.
Hold up, 52.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, we'll play it from here.
As difficult as it was for me, I have come to an inescapable and profoundly disturbing. I believe that an elite group of people and the corporations they run have gained control over not just our energy, food supply, education, and healthcare, but over virtually every aspect of our lives. And they do it by controlling the world of finance, not by creating more value, but by actually controlling the source of money. When I followed the money, I found that it took me up the levels of a pyramid. Here we are at the bottom level going about our daily lives. Above us is government, people who are given a monopoly on force and use it to tax and control us whether or not we agree. But who controls them? At the next level are the corporations. Many would say that it is now corporations and not nation states that rule the world. They call it a corporatocracy. To acquire the world's resources and control the markets, this corporatocracy must have access to cheap money. The big corporations get their loans at special rates from the big banks, which means that those who control the major banks, the moneyed elite, ultimately control the corporations. As I've followed the money, I've learned that almost everything I once believed about money is simply not true.
It's interesting how few questions we actually ask about very everyday things like when we go into a bank and we ask for a loan of, say, $50,000, £50,000, what actually happens? You see, most people live their lives based on a kind of vague image of what happens. What actually happens is you ask for £50,000, they type into your account £50,000. That's all they do. They don't mint any coins, they don't print any money, they don't move any precious metal anywhere. They just put £50,000 into your account on a computer screen. From that moment, you start paying interest on money that has never, does not, and will never exist.
It turns out that banks actually have about 9 times as much money they have on reserve in their vaults. This is possible because of what's referred to as fractional reserve lending. The way it works is that the Federal Reserve, or the central bank in any country, is legally allowed to determine the amount a bank must have on reserve. In the US, it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit 10 bank, the bank's...
So this is gonna, again, put into perspective visually what we were just talking about with the $100, but in this case, it's $10,000. All right. So really, again, see if you're able to digest this, and hopefully this is gonna make sense. Okay.
Money. It turns out that banks actually have about 9 times as much money out as they have on reserve in their vaults. This is possible because of what's referred to as fractional reserve lending. The way it works is that the Federal Reserve, or the central bank in any country, is legally allowed to determine the amount a bank must have on reserve. In the US, it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit $10,000 into the bank sets aside 10%, or $1,000, and then loans out the rest of your money. The way it works is you can ask for a car loan of $9,000. The bank loans out the deposit. The borrower then pays the person selling the car, and they go deposit the money into another bank, which is part of the same central banking system. This $9,000 is treated as a new deposit, and the process continues. Deposited and reloaned until the initial deposit of $10,000 becomes $100,000. The banking system just created $90,000 by loaning out your money. Apparently it began with the goldsmiths in the 17th century when people were trading in gold. Gold was heavy to carry around, so people stored the actual metal in vaults and traded receipts instead. Those receipts were the first paper money. Since only a few people would withdraw their gold at any given time, the vault owners, basically the new bankers, began creating receipts for more metals than they actually held. They loaned out those receipts and charged interest on money, gold, that they didn't really have. That's how our so-called fractional reserve system was born. In this system, the bankers get to make up money out of nothing, while the rest of us have to work hard to earn it. Created a modern form of serfdom where the mass of society is now working to pay off their debt to the banks.
All right, nice little quote on screen here to end off the clip. All right. Well enough that it is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Okay, it's a quote from 1922, Henry Ford. Okay, that statement stands true today. All right, think about it. You know, for the people that are on this call right now, the 91 of you, okay, I guess, you know, 90, not including John and I, okay, how many of you didn't know about fractional reserve banking until this call today? Drop a 1, right? And, you know, even for the individuals that have been on this call before, right, the calls that we've done in the past, think about how many of you didn't know until you were on a previous call, right? Think about how covered up this information is. Not even necessarily covered up, but just not exposed. The awareness of the vast majority of people just isn't there, right? So continuing with the slideshow here, okay, transitioning, let's talk about fiat money for a second. All right, this is what we are currently using as money, quote unquote money. Okay, fiat money, right? So even though a gold or silver standard is the ideal monetary system, no nation on earth has had its currency backed by gold or silver, for that matter, in several decades, sorry, more than years. Okay. Instead, we have been using fiat currency, a commodity created by the government that would otherwise be worthless, right? Notice how the banknotes have changed. This is what we're using today, right? Or something similar to this, maybe bills, the appeal looks a little bit different, but all the bills you're seeing here, right? Notice how it doesn't say, in exchange for gold coin, it literally just says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. All right. So, why use fiat? All right. And I'm gonna actually be real. Remind me how to pronounce that word. Seigniorage. Seigniorage. All right, respect. Seigniorage is the profit that is made by a government issuing currency. And essentially, think about it like this, right? $100 bill costs a couple pennies to actually mint, all right? To actually create. It's very, very minimal, cost to create the bills, yet the bills represent $100, right? Fiat currency is to gold as counterfeit money is to the dollar. Write that down, okay? Fiat currency is to gold as counterfeit money is to the dollar. All right, that's really, really important, okay? Whoever creates it has increased spending power as long as everybody else believes it has value, okay? And I wanted to bring you guys' attention to some of the pictures that we have here as well. All right, so let's say that you had, several thousand ounces of gold, right? Initially, you were able to only make, let's say, 1,000 coins, 1,000 gold coins. Over time, there was something called debasing that took place. And I don't know if John, we want to do the coin experiment. The box is over there if you want to. But it's interesting because if you were to look at, let's say, a quarter.
Do it later when the JFK. So
Bet. When you think about quarters that were made back in like the 1980s, we'll say, the 1970s. All right, there was more of a silver content within those coins. Over time, they started to mix metals. So there was only a small amount of gold or silver and more of another commodity, something like copper. Okay. And in doing that, you're spreading out the gold a little bit more to make more coins. All right. Debasing of currency is something that's been happening for years, right? Decades, in fact. Now, transitioning here, I want to talk about inflation, right? We're getting to, close to the end of my portion of the presentation here, right? And like I said, this is going to be an in-depth call, right? I hope you guys are taking notes because I guarantee you're not going to be able to retain all this information just from being here. All right. So let's talk about inflation, okay? One of the consequences of fiat money is inflation, right? The gradual decline in purchasing power over time. So initially we had a gold standard, right? There could not be more currency, right? Paper currency, created, right? Unless there was a certain amount of golds that, that currency was unable to represent. As we, moved away from the gold standard, there was no longer a limit to how much could be printed. Over time, if we take a look at the chart over here, right? This is the purchasing power of a 1913 $1 bill. So in 1913, right, it would have been worth $1. As time's going on, that same dollar in 2018 is only worth around 5 cents. Okay, and that's inflation, right? Even think about it, something that, maybe some of you guys knew, maybe some of you guys didn't know. In 2020, right, the year that just finished, right, one of the craziest years, right? It felt like a decade in 1 year for all the shit that went down. Okay, 2020 alone, all of the US dollars that are currently in circulation, right, 35% was created just last year. 35% of the entire monetary system, the entire monetary circulation was created in 2020 alone, guys. Okay. So, you really start to ask yourself, okay, if money can be printed unlimited, right? What then has to, kind of come as a byproduct of that? Well, it's losing purchasing power as it's becoming more abundant, as there's more paper currency, right? That paper currency over time is not going to have as much purchasing power. right? So by definition, right, fiat currency is not money, okay? Because for something to be considered money, it has to hold value over time. Again, remember the 3 rules, right? Who was taking notes? Drop down in the chat right now. What were the 3 things, okay, that needed to you know, be in place in order for something to qualify as money? Okay, universal medium. I'm thinking you probably, yeah, medium of exchange, perfect. All right, universal by itself isn't isn't one of them. All right, long-term store value, medium of exchange, unit of account, perfect, perfect. Love the note takers out here. Okay, excellent. So there's a couple of sites here. I don't know if I'm gonna really have a whole lot of time to go into them. You can look up WTF happened in 1971.com. There's a lot of, it's really funny URL, but there's really, really good information on there. A lot of charts that you guys can check out. And there's also, you know, money.visualcapitalist.com that you guys can check out and really get to, you know, become more familiar with the buying power of the US dollar over the past century. Okay. Now let's talk about the current, consequences of fiat, right? Again, really just keeping in mind, you know, the real consequences of inflation. Okay. You know, if you guys have been paying attention, or if you guys, you know, are familiar with what happened in Venezuela just a couple of years ago, okay, this is basically what happened, right? All of this currency, or as you know, most people know it, all of this money to just buy one chicken, right? You think about Zimbabwe. I actually have a $100 trillion bill in my room from Zimbabwe. Okay. When you look at all major currencies, right, in comparison to gold has, you know, maintained the value while literally all other currencies have fallen off a cliff. At some point, you know, some stuck around a little bit longer, but the vast majority of currencies saw huge dips, you know, once this whole debacking took place. Okay. And this was, I believe it was 1920. What was it here for the actual debacking? It was Nixon that unbacked currency from gold in 19.
Yeah, it was a slow process, but
initially he initiated it in like the 1920s, right? 1930s.
That would have been the Federal Reserve. Like the Federal Reserve was 1913.
Yeah.
That's when they started printing out more money than they had gold.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then I'll explain it later. There's a whole timeline we got in there.
But check out this note.
I think it's backwards all the way.
No, it shows backwards for us, but they should be able to read it. So this is
it looks normal.
$100 trillion Zimbabwe bill. That's only worth 80 USD. All right, so $100 trillion note that's only really worth 80 USD. You know, again, this is, you know, what inflation leads to, eventually something called hyperinflation. All right. So, you know, again, over time, right, as time goes on, fiat currencies always return to their intrinsic value of 0. Again, it's a piece of paper, guys. There's no intrinsic value there. All right. It was meant to at one point represent something like gold or silver. Then they debacked it, and now it's literally just a belief system. I give you $100 because you believe that it's worth $100. Right. And then I get, you know, the product that's worth $100, whatever the case may be. Okay. So now we're going to transition into the fun part, right? We're really just getting started here. Who issues fiat money? All right. So again, $100 bill, right? I'm sure you guys have seen an American $100 bill. US dollars are not issued by the Treasury. The Treasury is a part of the government. Okay. They're issued by a privately owned Federal Reserve Bank. So take this in. If you thought the government was in control of money, you're mistaken, right? The government or the Treasury, okay, does not create money or currency. That's the Federal Reserve. And we're going to get into that in a lot more detail here in a second. And that actually, you know, leads me to basically where I want to transition here and pass things off to, you know, my business partner, right? And, you know, this call is being recorded. Okay, for anybody that was wondering, right, this call is being recorded. Yeah, this is basically where I'm going to pass things off to John to basically go ahead and you know, end off the call, right? He's going to go in depth to the other 8 scams, one of which that's on screen. Okay, the other 8 scams, right? There's 9 scams that are going to be talked about in this presentation. You know, they are going to be coming a lot quicker than the first one did. But I'm going to go ahead and pass things off to him. All right, I want you guys to go ahead and drop some numbers if you guys got any sort of value from my portion of the presentation. There is going to be an open Q&A at the end of this call. All right, even if this call goes until like 5:30, 6 o'clock, we're still going to have some sort of an open Q&A for you guys. So any questions you're dropping, right? Any questions that you have as we're going through the motions, right? You'll be able to ask at the end of the call. That being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass things over to my boy, John. Let's get it.